The onTimer statement, introduced in Genero 3.0, executes code at regular intervals, with or without user interaction with the program. You can use this dialog level trigger to perform timed tasks, for example to process message queues, refresh data for a dashboard, or display resources in a time-based graph. onTimer is similar to the onIdle statement, but executes even when the user interacts with the application. Because of this, it's important for the code executed with an onTimer trigger to perform quickly, or the end user will experience poor performance. As a general rule, make sure the time spent in the onTimer code is less than the timer interval. For example, if the processing time takes about 2 seconds, it doesn't make sense to have an onTimer that triggers every second. onTimer is dialog specific and executes code only when the associated dialog is active. You would typically use onTimer in dialogs that don't handle field input, such as display array and menu. If you use it in input dialogs, it may execute in the middle of a field input, which can force field value validation and raise an input error. Here you can see an example of onTimer in a display array. The onTimer control block defines a set of instructions that must be executed at regular intervals. In this case, there's instructions to display a message and call the poll new jobs function. The poll new jobs function creates a new job about every 3 calls and adds it to the array for display when it returns to the main program block. The seconds parameter of onTimer must be an integer, literal, or variable. If the value is 0, the dialog timeout is disabled. It's important to note that the timer value is set when the dialog initializes its internal data structures. If you use a program variable instead of an integer constant, a variable change has no effect after the dialog initializes. If you want to change the value of the timeout variable, it must be done before the dialog block. This example uses a very small seconds value for demonstration purposes, but in practice you would use onTimer to give control back to the program after a reasonable period of time, such as 10, 20, or 60 seconds. When you utilize onTimer, be sure to thoroughly test your application to understand the trigger's behavior under all conditions. For example, notice that triggering an action interrupts the onTimer trigger until the user finishes the input or cancels. onTimer then resets the timer and continues to process. You'll see similar behavior if the user enters a different dialog, such as an input or construct. If you would like to learn more about onTimer, search for the topics Get Program Control on a Regular Basis and onTimer Block in the Genero Business Development Language User Guide.